The World Social Forum is in Montreal. The Olympics are in Rio de Janeiro. And I am surrounded by cats. Let's do the podcast. Not quite live from Forget the Box Studios in Montreal. This is the FTB Podcast. The only podcast you're listening to right now. Okay, welcome to the podcast. I'm your host, Jason C. McLean, and let's meet our panel.
Hi, I'm Casey Rosner. I'm a self-proclaimed journalist from Atlanta, Georgia.
Hi, I'm Ertekin, and I'm the managing editor at Forget the Box.
And we're recording this Sunday evening, August the 7th. And no, your eyes aren't playing tricks on you, those of you watching on the video version. We are in a somewhat different location. See, there was a problem with the booking server at Concordia. We blame Russian hackers, like the Democrats. I don't know, works for them, it should work for us too. Plus, our new location has FTB branded bottles of water. So we're drinking our own brand of water. Not available in stores. If there's a huge demand, maybe we'll put it out. But of course, we're still in Montreal. And what else is in Montreal this week is the World Social Forum. It's the first time it's been in North America ever. And things aren't going exactly that smoothly. Hannah Besseau has this report.
The World Social Forum 2016 has hit Montreal and so far has faced much controversy from the Montreal and global community. The goal of the WSF 2016 is to gather tens of thousands of people from groups in civil society, organizations, and social movements who want to build a sustainable and inclusive world where every person and every people has its place and can make its voice heard. However, the practice of this has so far been limited. Many have been denied visas to entry to attend the event, and in addition to this, an overtly anti-Semitic event was added to the roster. Many gathered to protest just a few days ago. There have been several different accounts of local POC community organizers being refused entry from the World Social Forum because they could not afford to pay registration, which is a $40 cost for the full conference and $10 for a solidarity rate.
In the south, the crisis is also affecting the north. The poor in the north. That's it, no? And I think for us to show solidarity for the 99% in the north that's also being affected by this crisis, it's very important for us to come here to show solidarity. But at the same time, it's really a bad experience for us because the north is not the most welcoming, and we're experiencing that right now with our colleagues from the Philippines, from Bolivia, from Senegal, from everywhere who are denied visas to come to Canada, and it doesn't speak well of your new government.
Thank you, Hannah, for that report. So yeah, the World Social Forum for the first time in Montreal. Big deal, right? Big deal. I mean, it always takes place in the Southern Hemisphere. It's the kind of thing that a lot of activists, NGOs look forward to because they actually have a chance to get some different issues on the table and discuss social change, social justice, environmental justice. I mean, I remember a few years ago, some of my communist friends were all excited going down to Venezuela when Chavez was still in charge to actually go to the social forum there. But now the forum's here, but not everybody that wants to come can come, right? I mean, there's 70% of people from countries that are not North American, not Western nations, who were invited by the social forum have been denied a chance to enter Canada. So that's I mean, they're trying to get some of these people, and people who are activists invited, they're trying to get some of them in, but the Canadian government's afraid that they might not leave, or they can't prove that they're going to want to leave Canada. Now, I think that, I mean, if this was like a big rock fest, or if this is like a big economic summit or something like that with a lot of rich people coming in, the Canadian government would have no problem. But because it's people, advocates for poorer people, and sometimes poorer people themselves, I don't know, it's kind of an embarrassing situation if you ask me.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. I think that the fact that 1,000, like you said, of NGOs and people from around the world, activists that are trying to come to Montreal, they're not able to, and I think that it's very embarrassing, specifically because Montreal recently has become a city that's been so well known for its welcomingness and for the fact that so many festivals and events are portrayed and exhibited here in Montreal, it should be a port of joy and of pride for the city, but instead it's very much so an embarrassment.
Yeah, we're known as a very progressive city, at least politically, very much to the left. Now, I mean, especially like, for example, the student protests, but that's something that the government doesn't want to acknowledge. But that actually increased our tourism. People even came here for that. There were actually people coming here to join in the protest.
Really?
Yeah. Like, I mean, the thing is, some of the things that make Montreal great are not what the government wants to endorse. And I bet you if the city of Montreal was really pushing the federal government on the social forum to let people in, I think things might be different. But the only push is from the social forum itself.
I mean, yeah, that would that would make sense, I guess. I don't know. Sorry. Just go ahead.
I
don't know.
Yeah, but no, that's one of the controversies happening. There's another controversy. There was an image associated with one of the conferences, and the image has since been pulled. It was for being incredibly anti-Semitic. And even people who support, for example, the BDS movement were very up in arms against this image. They decide, and it was pulled. And the conference was called Wahhabism, Zionism, and Terrorism, I believe. And I think people are wondering how this conference even became part of the social forum. I guess I'm wondering what kind of policy they have in terms of letting in. I mean, obviously talking about Zionism, problems with Israel is important, but using that kind of imagery, that sort of sends the wrong message. And now there's groups like the Jewish Defense League, who are actually a hate group, if you ask me, a very not nice group. They're taking advantage of this to try and basically, excuse my language, shit on the entire World Social Forum because of it. And I think that that's something that maybe, I don't know if that was the intention or who planned this, but it's when something like that happens, it kind of makes the left look bad.
It does, and so that's the thing. Sometimes people, when they're planning these kinds of events, they just, find an image, find an illustrator, and they just, put that up, and then they only realize how messed up it is after the fact. But that kind of speaks to the kind of ingrained biases that we have as part of living within a society, because usually when stuff like this happens, when people point it out, you're like, oh wow, I can see that now, but at the time it seemed perfectly fine to me.
Yeah, and I guess the thing is that's one of the main things. At least the critics of Israel and the BDS movement, for example, want to make it crystal clear that they're not anti-Semitic.
Right, yeah.
I mean, it's good that people caught it. And it's good that it was people. Yes, the B'nai B'rith caught it too, but it was eventually people on the left pushing to get it removed that got it removed. So that's good. It shows a little bit of, I guess, maybe self-policing.
Right, yeah.
So at least that's a good thing. Another, again, there's a lot of great things with the idea of the World Social Forum. It's great for activists, anarchists, I'm sure, as you heard in Hannah's report. Another controversy, though, is they're doing a big march, and they gave their itinerary to the police.
That's interesting.
Yeah. Now, for those of you not familiar with Montreal politics, during the student strike, there was a lot of protests in 2012, and in order to cover for the provincial government, the municipal government passed Bylaw P-6 requiring an itinerary for routes, among other things, also not wearing masks. We're going to have a bit more on that later in the news roundup segment. But there was a huge protest, and there was protest against this law because it's basically forcing people to give a route. And there's something to be said when organizations that are supposedly inclusive for all people do something which is basically, some people here don't feel very comfortable with the police at events or having the police given the route. And it's a matter of principle not to notify the police because they shouldn't have to. And to just do that because it's the simple and the peaceful thing to do, it almost shows a lack of respect and a lack of inclusiveness, I'd say.
Well, not only that, it's actually been called unconstitutional.
Yeah.
It's gone so far as that the P6 movement has almost become a standing point by which people of Montreal can unite and protest their right to protest in the way that they want to do it.
Yeah, exactly, and I mean the World Social Forum organizers are obviously, I imagine most of them are from Montreal. I don't know for a fact. I mean, this year's conference, I mean, obviously people from South America probably have no idea about Bylaw P-6, but the people from Montreal should know, and should know something for the local community. Just, I mean, and it was recently overturned, so they don't even have to do it, and it would be a safe march. The police aren't going to clamp down on thousands of activists marching in the street. They'll use the bylaw to clamp down when it's a smaller group of just a few hundred, and they'll be oppressive. But even they can't do that anymore. So there's no real fear or risk of safety or anything like that. There was no reason to do it. It just almost, I guess it's again somebody not thinking.
Yeah, or it's just maybe like an institutional thing, because when you're like, so the World Social Forum at this point is like a very established organization, almost. It's like an NGO of NGOs kind of thing.
Yeah.
And when that's the case, you know, the feeling of trying to preserve the legalness of the organization might trump the actual social concerns that you want to stand for. So maybe that could be one of the reasons why they decided to declare their, to keep them legitimate in the eyes of the state. But then again, that kind of goes against the point of having something.
Having the social forum. Yeah, this is not NGO is not a governmental organization. And appealing, especially keeping them in good in the eyes of the state when it's a North American state. That's the key thing too. Like keeping in line with, like Chavez's Venezuela or something like that, or when it's in a developing nation or something, keeping in line with the state there is one thing, but keeping in line with the restrictive aspect of a Western imperialist state seems to be definitely against what this whole thing is. I mean, have they become the Democratic Party? Or is that a bit? Am I reaching? Have they become the Liberal Party of Canada?
Well, the more mainstream progressive groups become, the more towards the center they inevitably come. That's just unfortunately how the things go.
Yeah, but I mean, I guess at this point they've already given the route, so there's not much they can do unless they just start walking a different way.
Yeah, maybe they're just giving a route, and then they're just gonna instead of turning left there, they're gonna turn right there.
Well, spontaneity is actually one of the main turning points in this whole debate. It's like whether or not you can actually justify and say that your route is pre-planned or preordained. It's like whether or not you decide to take a right here, that's your prerogative.
Exactly, and
I think that's definitely a way to get around the P-6.
Yeah, exactly. And actually, we're going to talk about Bylaw P-6 and a few recent developments in our news roundup segment. So, first item of news in the roundup is Bylaw P-6. Now, a few weeks ago, a lot of people, myself included, were celebrating a victory in the Quebec Superior Court. Anarcho Panda, aka Julien Villeneuve, a professor at UQAM, won a lengthy court battle to overturn a couple of the amendments to Bylaw P-6. Now, Bylaw P-6 was brought into effect by the Tremblay administration to back up, to be used as an alternative to Bill 78, which was really controversial that Jean Charest had passed. The elements overturned was not people were not allowed to wear a mask at a demonstration. Superior Court overturned that. And they also said that spontaneous demonstrations cannot be required to provide a route. But the thing is, Anarcho Panda is now arguing and now appealing that decision because the concept of a spontaneous demonstration he thinks is way too narrow. And he thinks that even planned demonstrations shouldn't have to provide a route to the police. And I happen to agree. And I think it's a good move to not just take because the victory as it was then, it was kind of like, okay, see how it's going to go. It's sort of a slap in the face to a lot of the to a lot of those tickets for P6. They're probably being turned out, but it wasn't a complete victory, and P6 could still be enforced. And I don't know. I kind of hope that he wins in this appeal.
Yeah, I'm of the same mind. I think that specifically the spontaneity clause, as we talked about before, is really interesting. There's a lot of nuance there in the legal text. So I think it'd be interesting to see how this turns out.
Yeah, it'd be interesting to see how it turns out. But also, I guess it's important that until that happens, people just keep protesting and keep not providing routes.
Yeah, the point of a protest is to, cause some sort of minor inconvenience so that people, start thinking about, okay, why are these people on the streets? Why are they, taking to the streets? Why are they causing all this commotion? And if you give your itinerary to the police beforehand, the police will do their best to make sure that no one is inconvenienced, and therefore you can just like completely ignore the event.
Yeah,
you can just
it becomes a parade. Like
Exactly.
it's not the St. Patrick's Day parade. It's
just think about like the absurdity of having like an anti-capitalist parade going down St. Catherine with the police just blocking the ways and just like making that that's not what a demo.
yeah.
That's not a demo.
Next step is corporate sponsorship.
Yeah.
Big floats. Anti-capitalism brought to you by McDonald's.
Yeah, that's
Free samples of things. But yeah, the other thing too is in terms of spontaneous. It's not just that they have to provide a route; it's that the route has to be accepted by police and has to be respected. That's the other part of the thing too. For a protest to be legal, they have to provide the route and the police declare. But look at what happened recently. The anti-police brutality march is not known for having no problems with the police. In fact, for the past decade or so, there would, even before all these bylaws came in, it would always end in police brutality, in police clamping down on people. But then, out of nowhere, this year, I was watching this on live stream. I was thinking like, okay, because I live near Cabot Square, in Shaughnessy Village, and the march started at La Fontaine Park. And it ended up making its way all the way down Saint Denis, along St. Catherine to Cabot Square. And I was watching this on live stream. I was like, wait, the cops aren't stopping it? And they didn't provide a route. They just went out and they did their thing. The cops didn't interfere. There was no violence. There were no arrests. And I was freaking out watching this. I was like, they're passing Guy? Wait, where are they? Are they coming here? And you could even hear some of the speakers at the end in Cabot Square almost sound the surprise in their voice that they actually got to finish. But you see, it was disruptive, but there were no arrests. There was no violence because the police didn't clamp down on it and didn't impose this undemocratic violation of free speech that is P-6. So that's why I think it's incredibly important that everyone keeps the fight, especially if they're organizing any kind of protest. Now, an organized event though can have its problems as well too. For example, the Osheaga Festival. Very famous festival. Forget the Box has been to it a number of times. We'll go again. I spoke to people who went to it this year. They loved it. They had a great time. But there were a couple of problems, major problems. One of them, a woman something was slipped into her drink when she was talking to people, and she lost her friends. And she managed to get out of there. And she went back the next day, the security, to tell them what happened. And they basically said, "Oh, you should watch your drink." Typical like victim blaming sort of stuff. And obviously, when it hit the media, their PR people were a little bit more responsive. Were a little bit less victim blamey, but still, the fact is they had that attitude. And also, there's a story of a woman from a band from Toronto. Her and her boyfriend were in a band. They weren't performing at Osheaga, but they were. One of the sponsors had invited them and given them passes to the VIP area, and one of their passes didn't scan right. And then the security guard ran up to them, apparently karate chopped their lunches from the food cart out of their hand and hit her and knocked her to the ground. I mean, the festival was always very well organized. I guess these two incidents sort of really reflect badly on it.
Yeah, I definitely say that it was the least professional Osheaga I personally attended. I know personally that I was waiting for my friend and a bunch of my friends going to see one of our friends perform. We were lucky enough on Friday afternoon. If you ever get the chance, definitely go listen to them. But yeah, essentially what had happened is they kept us in suspense, waiting for our passes to come through at accreditations and guest lists for almost an hour in the heat with no access to water. Their porta potties were locked with a literal lock-in key to not let anybody go. Their internet system was down for a very long time. Scannings weren't working. So altogether was...
This is a high-tech festival. Like I've heard stories when we've covered it in the past. Like I've heard stories. There's like a media tent with like good internet and stuff like that. You can plug in your phones. It's all very well put together. But for some, maybe just things slipped this year, got too big or something.
Yeah, even artists weren't allowed to cross the border. I know Disclosure was kept and their set was canceled, and then apparently there was this mass exodus of people just saying, "All right, we're done for the day."
Figuring out they were just there for them. Radiohead wasn't enough to keep them on, or Chili Peppers or whoever it was that night.
The day in between, but yeah.
Yeah, if they didn't let the Red Hot Chili Peppers cross the border though, that would
be massive riots.
He
would have played his way across the border.
No, they would just sneak into the country.
I suppose that would count as a spontaneous demonstration.
And that would count as a
Yeah,
spontaneous
that's true.
demonstration. And something that's struck me kind of spontaneous, because I hadn't been following it, the Green Party of Canada today voted in favor of a motion endorsing BDS, boycott, divestment, and sanctions against Israel. And apparently Elizabeth May herself was not in favor of this. But I guess the Green Party truly is democratic, and their members were able to vote for it. Now it's party policy.
It's interesting to hear because, BDS is like one of the most, controversial topics ever, at least in our times. And we know that like the Canadian government, the Liberals, the Conservatives, that's like one of the few things that unites the governments of Canada in terms of like the different parties.
Yeah.
And it's like interesting to see that the Green Party was, kind of...
Well, the NDP, a lot of the membership probably does support BDS, but their leadership definitely doesn't. Although the leadership is going to change. And Trudeau has even said like it should. He passed something in Parliament saying like it's something that should be like it doesn't have any teeth or anything like that. It's just a motion saying this is not our. We should speak out against this. And now the Green Party is supporting it. So
Trudeau is actually, I think not last year, but the year before that, McGill was having its at its Students' Society. We're having a bunch of different motions come up regarding the BDS thing, and Trudeau personally tweeted at McGill saying that he would be very ashamed if this motion passed, and then
the motion did pass, and it passed at the same time at that
Trudeau.
It
was
couldn't
a
get it ratified.
complete mess.
Yeah.
The way it was handled at McGill.
It didn't get ratified, but it interestingly enough passed the same day or the day after Trudeau passed that motion in Parliament.
Yeah, so...
The one in Concordia passed.
That's right.
Yeah.
So there are some people who are still trying to, deal with this.
Yeah. But it's I think the Green Party, is this gonna? I wonder if this is gonna help them electorally. I think what they're doing with this now it's really interesting because Elizabeth May isn't the most left-leaning leader the Green Party's ever had. In fact, she's one of the more corporatist, one of the more mainstream, and she was against this. But the membership voting this in, I think it might actually potentially could take some votes away from the at least left votes away from the NDP. It's not going to affect the Liberal vote, and I don't know how it's going to affect the next time, but it might help. I don't know. A lot of the NDP base might move to the Green Party.
That's an interesting idea, that the whole thing is about just vote mongering.
Exactly. Well, yeah. The Green Party is a political party. They're all political parties. So I'm just wondering. I'm looking at this from a political standpoint. I think it's great that they actually did this, which is really I think for a major country's a major party to endorse this, not just criticizing Israel, but endorse BDS, and to be might actually give the Green Party more votes. It'd be interesting to see what happens.
Yeah, but the Canadian elections are still relatively
recent. A while away.
So
they might get it changed. There was a watered down version which they might change it. Elizabeth May might not be the leader next time.
Yeah. Well, yeah, so a lot of different things can happen, and when it comes to politics, political parties are not necessarily the way to go when you want to bring about change, right?
It's a good point, yeah.
And because usually what you get, as I was saying earlier, is
you get Hillary Clinton. You want Bernie Sanders, but you get Hillary Clinton.
Yeah, that's the entire existence of the American Democratic Party is all about the Democratic Party seeing social movements happening
and trying to suck them into their
and sucking them in and making it and watering it down and making it more moderate and acceptable, bringing about some change, but at the end of the day, the status quo more or less remains unchallenged.
Yeah. That's politics and
lip service.
Lip service. Although the Green Party in the States actually looks like they're doing, they're not doing as well as they would if Sanders actually endorsed them. But I saw they have some big names. They're like Julian Assange speaking on video phone and stuff like that. Yeah, the Green Party. He made the comment that forcing people to vote for Hillary because of Trump, the fear of Trump is like, there was a term he used. He called it threatening or something. No. I can't believe I just forgot what he said, but it was a really interesting quote.
Assange also is an interesting character, and do you really want his endorsement? He has his own problems and issues, and
speaking of problems and issues, there's a lot of them in Rio at the Olympics, like always. So the Olympics have started, the opening ceremonies of the Olympiad in Rio. Everyone's excited. I think Gisele Bündchen walked across the field pretending to be the ideal Brazilian person, I guess. I don't really understand that. I didn't actually watch the opening ceremonies. This Olympics, like normal, there's a lot of problems with it. Not to mention the fact that I'm sure the Rio de Janeiro really probably couldn't afford a lot of what they ended up doing for this Olympics. And their president's currently in a lot of trouble too. But also there's the threat of the Zika virus. But some of the more interesting controversial things coming out of the Olympics, the Russian team just had a bunch of people banned, right?
Yeah, because of like an entire scandal regarding steroids and drugs. So the first thing I saw when I woke up this morning was like, Russian team not going to be able to compete.
Yeah. Is it specifically one part of the team or is it the whole team?
I think it's the whole team, and I'm pretty sure that it was the big thing is that it's state sponsored. So that's where it gets really tricky. Is like, to what extent did the Russian government purposefully dope up their athletes for the Olympics this year?
Yeah, no. That apparently they're also not going to be able to compete in the Paralympic Games either. So that's I mean that's something that's more of a within the games kind of scandal. There's also apparently now I heard a couple of things. I heard that Brazil is actually the country with the they're not companies yet. The
countries of the world.
Yeah, the countries of the world are not the companies of the world yet.
Close, yeah.
They're pretty close. It's going to happen if some people have their way. But Brazil is actually one of the countries with the highest rates of LGBT murders, and it's not surprising that there was a lot of homophobic heckling happening. Women's soccer players from Canada and the United States, they were shouting "bicha" at them. I'm not really sure exactly how that translates, but which is homophobic. Although their excuse was they were just chanting Zika. Like apparently they shouted that at Hope Solo, which I don't see how it makes it much better.
Like, why would you chant Zika? I mean, I don't speak Portuguese, so I don't know what it might mean other than the
Zika
disease.
Maybe it's they want them to get the Zika virus, or
which doesn't make it better, does it?
No, it doesn't make it better at all. So yeah, there's a lot of problems. Also, I mean, the thing is, the country was not ready for the Olympics. There were protests, of course, because especially like a lot of workers always generally get screwed over in these situations. I mean, there's also a lot of corruption. Look what happened in Montreal. We only finished paying off our Olympics a few years ago, I think, and it was in 1976. And I mean, that stadium doesn't really work that well anymore. But there's still a swimming pool there. But there are some good things happening this Olympics, some interesting things. Like you were talking about a fencer.
Yeah, so this woman, Ibtihaj Muhammad, is going to be America's first Olympian to compete in the Olympics while wearing her hijab, which is interesting. And she, I watched a video about her on Facebook just today, and she was like, very excited about that, and she was like very happy and proud to both represent her country, but also represent her faith.
Yeah, that's progress. Another element of progress is there's a refugees team this Olympics. But refugees, I guess mostly Syrian refugees, though not exclusively, refugees who are now in other countries are not competing representing the country that they're currently in, their new home. They're definitely not representing the country they fled from. They're just representing themselves as refugees, which I think is for an institution that's not usually that progressive. I think that's really an interesting progressive choice.
Yeah, I'm definitely inclined to agree with you here. I think having a refugee team is a very good step for the Olympics, at least publicity-wise.
Yeah, publicity. Speaking of publicity, Justin Trudeau, of course, has decided to jump all over the publicity things that his heart's with Canada, but he loves his refugee team because he likes to photo ops and things like that. And what's bad for publicity, though, is they're now banning GIFs. Produced by anybody but the official Olympic sponsor. Like you get like a GIF of somebody doing a crazy thing in gymnastics, and you share it and stuff like that. They're going after the people that produce the GIFs and just anything that's not done by the official companies.
But how do you even Okay, so the thing about making a GIF is you go to giphy.com, which is like a website, and you put a URL from your favorite YouTube video, and then you choose your own 6 seconds, and it makes a GIF out of it. And how is the Olympic Committee planning on controlling this? What if I decided to make a GIF of my favorite moment from the Olympics and then send it to you? It's just
Well-
Are you legally obliged to tell the Olympic Committee that I've sent you a GIF and it's illegal?
I think it'd be more that they would go after maybe gifly.com or because I mean YouTube. First of all, I don't think a lot of these Olympics stuff will. People might post it on YouTube, but those might get taken down.
I mean, they will eventually end up there. Everything ends up in YouTube one way or another.
Yeah. Which seems
Hidden, you know.
the IOC is just a very litigious organization, and they're very old world. Now, before the podcast, there was a rumor that the Olympics might consider having just one location permanent. And I don't know if this is something that that's going to happen, but there's even a rumor of the Olympics being exclusively in Athens.
Now, I personally think that would be an interesting thing, but you'd have to go about it a certain way in order to make sure that the infrastructure developed for a continual every 4 years Olympics in Athens would be consistent and sustainable and good for the environment, because that's a major problem with the Olympics currently, as we're finding out in Rio, and I assume it will continue to be a problem in the next 4 years.
Yeah, well, the thing is, the Olympics, there's a problem every time they go to a city. Some cities are ready for it. Like, I'm sure it didn't ruin London, but I'm sure it didn't help London either. But cities that maybe aren't as like wealthy or something like that will, like, I'm sure even in Vancouver, there's a controversy about the road up to Whistler. They wanted to make this road, and they had to go through native territory, and they had to displace people. They had to displace ecosystems, and yeah, I mean like moving it around all the time. I mean, it creates that whole we're going around the world, but I mean, there's so much money to be made by the IOC and bribes probably too. It's an organization only probably slightly more ethical than FIFA, which doesn't say, and FIFA's only
Questionable at best.
Yeah, I think there's certain mob cells that are a little bit more ethical than than FIFA, but. At least if you're in Montreal and you're not able to attend the Olympics, you're not able to attend the World Social Forum, or if you are, there's a lot of stuff going on. We're going to be back with predictions in a bit, but right now it's the community calendar.
The World Social Forum is coming to a close August 14th. The WSF is an annual meeting of civil society organizations first held in Brazil, which offer a self-conscious effort to develop an alternative future through the championing of counter-hegemonic globalization. For full event listings, check out www.fsm2016.org. Sunday, August 14 at Divan Orange, the Holds will be performing alongside High and Mighty and Maybe Grays as part of their late summer tour. The event will feature new material to be included on a full-length, soon-to-be-released record. Also on Sunday is this year's Pride Parade beginning at 1 p.m. The parade will be on the corner of St. Matthew and travel east to René Lévesque Boulevard. These events honor an important tradition that began in Montreal in 1979. Participating groups and businesses will be encouraged to design their floats incorporating this year's theme, Our Flag, Our Nature, Green. And finally, August 19 to 21st, Collective Culture is bringing a series of events to Never Apart. CCMTL is an all-access weekend that celebrates the voices of innovative Black Indigenous people of color in Canada. CCMTL brings creatives together for conversations, hangouts, performances, and parties. This festival is a chance to kick back, relax, inspire, and be inspired. Arts, academia, popular culture will be together in an unforgettable weekend. Visit www.collectiveculture.ca for more details.
And it's time for predictions.
I predict that Justin Trudeau will make a shirtless appearance at the World Social Forum.
I predict that more Game of Thrones actors will keep visiting Montreal.
Ooh, good one. I predict that the 50 athletes who think they have Olympic fever will realize they actually just contracted the Zika virus.
I predict that my birthday, which is also on the first day of the World Social Forum, will be okay.
And I predict that by the year 3000, Montreal will be completely overrun by cats.
And I predict that on the next podcast, sadly, we will have fewer cats. But we will still have our Forget the Box brand water. So I want to thank you guys very much. Casey and Jem. Jem, we can read you on Forget the Box. Mm-hmm. We can read you. You have an article coming up?
Yeah, maybe.
No, like...
oh, yeah, sorry.
Yeah,
I'm currently collaborating on a few projects right now, so definitely keep posted for my work
Yeah, and possibly Unforget the Box as well, too. So thank you very much for joining us. We'll catch you in 2 weeks on the next podcast. The FTB podcast by the Forget the Box Media Collective in Montreal was hosted by Jason C. McLean and produced by Hannah Besseau. For daily, unique, original content covering news, music, politics, arts, lifestyles, food, film, you name it, we've got it. Check out forgetthebox.net.